Thank you, John. It's only a personal opinion, but I think he's nothing unless he sings. I mean, it's just one of those things.
Thank you.
My next guest has put together a book which celebrates one of the most loved art forms in Australia, black and white cartooning. And I've got to tell you, I just love reading this, reread it over and over again. And the gentleman who's put it together is one of the doyens of the cartooning world. It's a great pleasure to welcome GMA, Vane Lindsay. Hi, Vane. Good to see you. It's always been my experience that the black and white artist, the cartoon artist, is always a very individual person. You're not a run-of-the-mill type person. You see things that we don't necessarily see.
That's so, yes. Extraordinary people, aren't I?
How did you get into it?
I got into it during the Second World War. I was put in a unit called the Australian Army Education Service, and the Australian Army Education Service produced a magazine called Salt. And I was taken on board as a staff artist, and that's how I started my career.
I suppose I mentioned you as one of the doyens, and that indeed is what you are in this field. The person who always comes to mind for me with cartooning in Australia is Stan Cross. There's something very special about that man.
Indeed. He was the originator, of course, of the most famous Australian cartoon of a chap hanging from a girder, and another chap hanging onto him. They're miles up on a building, and the chap on the bottom is looking straight up at the chap on the top whose trousers have fallen down, and the caption is, "For God's sake, stop laughing, this is serious."
Yeah, right, you're right. And in fact, I think we might have that to show in just a few moments' time, because that is the piece de resistance. Basically, that turned things around for Australian humour in black and white, didn't it?
Yes, indeed, yes. And it's still known, still reproduced, still Australia's favourite joke.
Right. So if that hadn't happened, I mean, obviously before Stan Cross did that one, we had a great history. But am I right in saying that was a turning point?
I don't know. There were a lot of great artists at the time working with him, who also produced good humour. Cecil Hart was one. He was the original digger artist on Smith's Weekly.
Yes. Twice
wounded at Gallipoli, and the first president...
Look, pardon me just one second. We've got a bit of a problem, unfortunately, with the stuff we want to show. I don't think there's much sense in continuing, because the important thing is that we've got to see the material that you're talking about. So I'm going to introduce the next act, and then we'll come back and chat with you, Vane, because I want to go through the cartoons and give them the homage that they deserve. And the next act is a bit... I know you'll enjoy this, Vane, because I know you enjoy classical music. Stay there, please. It's the Melbourne String Quartet, and they're going to perform for us, as John mentioned before, the Minuet and Trio from Mozart's Quartet in D minor. They've got a couple of dates coming up, which we'll talk about after they perform for you. It's a great pleasure to have on the show. Take two. I mean, this literally is a television take two. We were talking before to Vane Lindsay, who's got this magnificent book, which it really is, it's a beauty. As I said before, it's a must-read, certainly for me. I went through it a couple of times. Because of technical problems, we couldn't bring some of the cartoons to air. We were talking about Stan Cross, and we decided, certainly on your recommendation, that he changed cartooning here in Australia. And he was most famous, of course, Stan Cross, as a cartoonist. He was famous for Wally and the Major, wasn't he?
That's true, yes, yes. Among other strips, of course.
Yeah, but that was his number one?
No, he originated a strip for Smith's Weekly called You and Me, later taken over by Jim Russell, now called The Potts.
Right, the one we just saw then, actually, that was one of that was Mr. Potts, wasn't it?
Mr. Potts, yes, yes, indeed. Yep.
You also talked about the most famous of all cartoons, and the one that sort of seemed to change everything. We've actually got it to show on camera now. Just give us the caption again, please, Vane.
For God's sake, stop laughing, this is serious. Drawn in 1933, and still Australia's most funniest joke.
Yes, indeed. And no one's been able to surpass that.
No, nobody. Not yet.
Vane, we've got some cartoons which we'll go through while we're lucky, and you might like to talk us through it. Fatty Finn's Weekly.
Fatty Finn. That was a comic originated to combat the enormous success of Ginger Meggs.
By Banks.
By Jimmy Banks, yes, indeed.
Who did Fatty Finn?
Sid Nichols, in Sydney.
Yes. Is he still living, Sid Nichols?
No, Sid's long gone.
Right, OK. Some more. Bluey and Curly.
Bluey and Curly by Alex Gurney. originated during the Second World War down here in Melbourne.
Right. Let's have a look. Oh, Mr. Squiggle.
Mr. Squiggle, Norm Hetherington's character. That's a drawing of the puppet.
Yeah, and here's the gentleman himself with Rolf Harris.
With Rolf Harris, taken in Sydney last year. Yes.
Wonderful. That,
Yes.
And that holds some sort of television record, I think, anywhere in the world, Mr. Squiggle, for being on television.
Indeed, yes. Norman got the Australian medal for his contribution.
Did he really?
Yes.
That's
yes,
wonderful.
Yes.
This one here, well, everyone
Everyone
Ginger
knows
Meigs.
Ginger, yes, yes. Ginger Meigs by Jim Banks.
Yes, and now being drawn by James Kemsley.
That's right, in Sydney, James Kemsley's drawing
Yeah.
it, yes.
Tell us about the club, because it sounds like a wonderful club.
It's a national body, Bert, founded in 1924. This year we're celebrating our 70th birthday. That's a history of the club.
And the club is called?
The Australian Black and White Artists Club.
Yeah.
And I represent the Melbourne chapter.
And I would assume that when the guys get together, a couple of cold ones are kept down, are they?
Just a couple, Bert. just a couple.
Just in case of snake bite or whatever.
That's right, yes, indeed. Yes.
So when's the next big function?
It's at the Sydney Town Hall in October. We're celebrating our 70th birthday there.
Wonderful.
I don't know who the guest of honour is yet, but we've had Senator Richardson, Bob Hawke twice, Keating, Dr Hewson, all the state premiers. They've all been our guests at these functions.
Right. We'll just go through what we've got left in the way of the Leunig, of course.
Michael Leunig,
Recognise
yes.
that style anyway. And I think here's some of your work.
That's
not you.
Kaz Cook.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
a lovely one.
It's got to be you now? No?
And there's mine.
Oh, that's yours, yeah.
Yes, yes.
We are right out of fingernails. Could I suggest the improvisation? Wonderful.
It's a bit rude.
Good. Good to see you.
Thank you, Bert.
And just a great pleasure to everyone who'll be there on that big annual event. Jim Russell, of course, will be there.
Indeed he will.
Yeah,
Yes,
famous man.
yes.
And there once again is the book, and as I say, I recommend it to you. Fane Lindsay was one of our special guests this morning. Coming up, Mr. Rock and Roll, Glenn Baker, and right after the break, a fine actor in Jacqueline McKenzie. She's going to join us.
Very best. Mitchell from the Australian.